Hello, in this video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to model a low poly rock asset. We're going to be using Autodesk Maya and ZBrush 407. In ZBrush, we're going to be creating a high poly rock, and we're going to create UVs inside of ZBrush, and we're going to decimate the high poly rock to get a low poly version of the rock. Then we're going to be using XNormal to bake out the details, the normal map and ambient occlusion. We're also going to be getting the cavity map as well. So let's get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is to navigate to ZBrush. I'm going to create a plane. Hit edit and make sure it's a polymesh 3D. I'm going to hit B on my quick pick menu, and I'm going to look for the IMM claw brush, which contains a predefined rock model that can be used and re-edited within your ZBrush project. So I'm just going to click and drag while holding down Shift to create the rock. I'm going to go to my subtool menu, and I'm going to split it to parts. Now in your subtool menu, you'll notice that you have the rock that you've created and you have the plane. We no longer need the plane, so I'm just going to delete it. You can navigate to your brush menu over here and search for the modifiers sub menu, and you can click on this button, and there you can see the a wide range of other rocks that you can choose from. I'm going to randomly choose this one. I'm going to click and drag, then hold down Shift to scale it uniformly as I'm drawing it out. I'm going to hit W to bring out my transpose master, and I'm going to position this rock well. Then I'm going to hit R again to rotate it. I'm going to rotate it by holding down Shift to snap it along angles. Hit W again to position it. So I'm just shifting in between W and R keys, and E to scale it as well. Finally, again, we're going to create another rock. So I am going to use this one. Drag, hold down Shift. I'm going to make this one a bit big. Okay. Position it here, then rotate it. So I'm just going to control drag outside my canvas to clear my mask. I'm going to bring up the transpose tool again, and I'm going to cut off my model at the base so that it looks like it has a uniform sitting place at the ground. So once this is done, I'm going to dynamesh the rocks to attach them together. And maybe before I do that, I'm just going to move this one's a bit into this other big one, like so. And maybe redo the transpose. Okay, so go over to my geometry tab and dynamesh, just hit the dynamesh button. ZBrush is going to calculate the Dynamesh resolution and everything, so it's probably going to take a couple of seconds. So once that's that, I'm going to turn off the Dynamesh option, and I'm going to go to my quick pick menu again, and I'm going to select my flatten brush, adjust the size, and I'm just going to come in and flatten out some of the angular looking faces. Once I flatten them out, I'm going to go back in and use the planar cut shallow brush to create even smoother flat surface that's going to give our rocks an overall stylized look. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to bring up my lightbox menu by hitting comma on my keyboard. I'm going to go to my brush menu over here in my lightbox tool. I'm going to search for planar, and I'm going to use the planar cut shallow brush, and this just cuts into the mesh and creating flat surfaces. So it's a really cool tool. I use this brush a lot when creating flat angular surfaces, or when I need to even out uh, parts of a geometry. So just creating random flat surfaces. Okay, so I believe at the moment this should work. Okay, so fine. So the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to be using the remesher to decimate this mesh further. And to do this, we're going to go to our plugin, Z plugin menu. You can find it here, but I've just created a shortcut extension over here. So I'm just going to go to my decimation master, and I'm going to hit pre-process current. And what this does is that ZBrush now looks at the mesh, at its topology, the number of polygons, that's the triangles and quads that it has, and it tries to see how well it can reduce them. It also caches this data. So we're just going to give it time to process it. So the higher the number of polygons, the longer it's going to take. I don't know, for some reason I had to do that twice. Okay, so it's done. So when I hit the decimate current, you probably think that nothing has happened because I've just pressed it and you haven't seen anything happening. But if you actually look at the wireframe view of the model, it has been reduced drastically. Now it's not the best way of reducing of remeshing, retopologizing your meshes. But in our case, since we are dealing with really flat angular surfaces, it will work really well for us. But if I was trying to model something organic, like an animal or a human being or an alien creature or something, I wouldn't use this because it just gives you trouble. It gives you lots of triangles that are really hard to work with. So we're going to reduce this further. So currently the decimation is set at 20%. I'm just going to try 1% and see what it gives us. So 1% is actually really good. And we have a total of around 7,785 polygons to deal with, which is not bad. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to go to my UV master, still under my plugin section, and I am just going to hit unwrap. And now what ZBrush has done, it has created UVs for this rock set. So if I hit flatten, these are the UVs, which are really helpful when we'll be baking out the detail from this model. So I'm just going to hit and flatten. And the next thing that I'm going to do is we are now done with ZBrush. So I can now export this into Maya. So I'm just going to hit export. Probably desktop. Let me create a new folder. You don't have to create a new folder, you can just save it wherever you want, but for me, I have to create a new one. So I'm just going to call it rock, and I'm going to call this rock shift underscore HP for high poly, and I'm just going to hit save. I'm going to close ZBrush and jump into Maya. So I'm going to navigate to my folder that I've just created on my desktop and just drag it into my scene inside of Maya. As preference, I usually like working with the legacy default viewport because I'm able to see things a bit more clearly. Currently, my pivot point is messed up, so I'm just going to go to my bonus tools Sorry about that. I'm going to go over an option set pivot to center base. I can't remember what it is because I'd created a shortcut here, but the name is set pivot to center base. So I'm just going to click on that, and what that does is that it centers the pivot point of the model to the bottom center of it. So just makes it easier to move it around. I'm going to hit X on to hold X on my keyboard and snap it to the center of my grid as well. So what I'm doing here, so by default, if you export models from ZBrush to Maya, it usually comes in with this part as a prefix. So it's prefix rock HP, and it's really hard to get rid of this prefix. But one way I've figured out how to do this is by using Maya's namespace editor, and you can find it under Windows, General Editors, and Namespace Editor. I just created a shortcut over here. So I click it, this is the prefix name. If I hit delete, then merge it with the root. It gets rid of the prefix. So now I can rename this to whatever I want. Okay, so that's that. Rename the material as well as rock, just maybe M shift underscore rock. Awesome. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to select this and duplicate it. I'm going to my polygon menu, and I'm going to reduce this further because it would be a nightmare for you to try and run this inside a game engine, because it has a lot of triangles in it, and the triangles are just a mess. They're not uniform. So we need to clean this up. We need to optimize it for it to be able to run smoothly inside a game engine such as Unity or whatever game engine that we want to run it on. So select this, and I'm going to use the reduce option in Maya. So I have an error. Cannot reduce polygon object with non-manifold geometry. So it's kind of hard to explain what non-manifold geometry are. We'll do that a bit later because it's a bit out there for this tutorial. But I'm going to show you how to clean it up. So select the mesh and go to the mesh option and just hit clean up. Make sure the manifold checkbox is ticked. Just hit apply, and now we say okay, it has been fixed. Now we should be able to reduce it. Brings up our dialog box here with a percentage option. So this is by how much the rock is being reduced percentage wise. So if we do 85, the rock has been reduced from this to this by 85%, which is really cool. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to edit, delete by type, history, or you can hit Alt Control D, Alt Shift D. So I'm not sure. Yeah, Alt Shift D. So once that's done, I'm going to rename it to Rock LP for Rock Low Poly, and I'm going to smoothen it as well. Okay. So the next step is we're going to be taking all this detail from this high poly rock, and we're going to be transferring it to this low poly one. To do this, we're going to be using XNormal, which is an external program that has been designed specifically to do this. So step number one, let's export this again. So file, export selection, desktop, my rock folder. We're going to export it as an FBX file. So rock shift_HP for high poly. I'm going to recenter this again, hold down X, snap it to the center. File, export selection, rock, this time will be LP. So that's that. We are done inside of Maya. I'm just going to quickly ensure that the UVs that we created inside of ZBrush are still there, which they are. So next step is XNormal. So just going to open it up. And for this program to work, it needs two models. It needs the high poly one, which we created here. I'm just going to drag it here, and it needs the low poly one. So I'm just going to place it there. And in the baking options, these are the different kind of information that we want to get out of our rocks. So we have normal, height, ambient occlusion. It's okay if you don't know what they mean. I'm going to explain it to you later as we go along. But for now, just ticked in the normal, ambient occlusion, and the cavity. So once this is done, I'm just going to hit generate maps. So depending on the machine you're using and depending on uh, how dense your high poly mesh is, uh, that's what determines how long this process is going to take. Uh, it usually takes longer when calculating this ambient occlusion map, but it's an issue I've kind of only noticed when using XNormal program. There are other programs that do this fairly quickly. But for this video tutorial, I'm just going to use XNormal. But in future, I'm going to show you other programs that we can use that are a bit faster. That being said, although XNormal takes longer, for me it just gives me the best results. So it's still loading. So it's done, and now we have the information that we needed. So the first data that we got from the high poly model is what we call the normal map. And the normal map contains all the details. So if you had cracks and everything, they'll be reflected onto the normal map. The second one that we got was ambient occlusion, and this is just shows the area that are not affected by light, so the shadowy areas. And the third one that we got is the cavity map, and this just shows the sharp edges or the literally the cavities that make up the model. So to show you how this works exactly, I'm going to launch Marmoset Toolbag, which is a real-time rendering application for previewing model, mostly used uh, by game developers. Without it, just eliminates the need of having to uh, import your model inside the game engine to view it. So with this program, you can just see how it would look like inside game engine. So I'm just going to hit file, and I'm going to import the model. So this is the low poly rock. It doesn't have any details, but this is going to change when we add in our baked information. So okay, I think I've selected the wrong one, so just give me a few seconds to figure this out. Oh, I had imported the wrong model, so it actually took me a while to figure out that I was in the wrong folder. So let's do this again. I've just imported the low poly one, and as you can see, the number of triangles are low, so it doesn't have any kind of detail. But once we add in the information that we baked, you can quickly see that now it looks a lot more detailed, even though it doesn't have that much triangles. Okay, so let's use the ambient occlusion map. You can see the dark areas that I was telling you about. So that's it for this part of the tutorial. In the next part, we're going to be creating textures for this rock model. So stay tuned and thank you for watching.